would still have their job in the NFL. And if you break it down regular season,
other than Jeff Fisher.
Other than Jeff Fisher, exactly. Other than Jeff Fisher. And so the problems that the Saints have, and this year, to me, from my perspective, the New Orleans Saints offense has let this team down. They have not shown up in the first half of the Kansas City game, the Denver game, the Carolina game in Carolina, nor this Detroit game. They didn't show up in the New York Giants game. They didn't show up in the second half of the San Diego game. Basically, the defense got 3 turnovers, and that's how they won that game. This offense is not functioning well. When you only have Mark Ingram touching the ball 7 times in a game, after this man has been the most explosive running back, right along with Ezekiel Elliott, something is wrong with your logic. The Saints
Mark got hurt.
Easily. Yeah, but he came back in the game also, too. He came back in. And when he left out being hurt, he came back in also. The issues, even if it's not Mark Hightower, when you are bent on and for Brandon Cook to make the statements he made, that's the same thing the Saints do with Drew Brees, his stats. That's why they tried to throw the touchdown at the end that was picked off. So Brandon Cook is only emulating possibly what his agent is telling him to do so he can demand more money with his stats, because we know the stats are what you use as a bargaining chip. I'm an accountant by trade. And for you to go into the room, although he's in his 3rd year and next year will be his 4th year, there could be other things that have pushed him behind it. Bottom line is, Coach Payton and Mickey Loomis have to reel this in and figure out what's going to happen with this team, because what's going to happen next year? We said this in 14, we said this in 15, and even when we got excited a little bit in 16. Now we are saying 2017. The reality is there's going to have to be a decision made in terms of Coach Payton and the New Orleans Saints. And I'm afraid Mr. Benson don't want to have to do it, but the fans are beginning to get tired of this losing ways. I went through this all in the 70s, all of the 80s. We had a break with Jim Mora, and then most of the 90s. And so the Saints are at a cornerstone in terms of this team because the job is simply not being done by Coach Sean Payton. Thank you, guys.
Wait. 1 second, Professor. 1 second. Quick question for you, because I want to get your take on this before we wrap up the show. I know you have a problem with the coaching. No beef with that. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I'm not saying that you're wrong at all when you say you put blame on Coach Payton. I'm not gonna say you're wrong on that. But I have a question for you. Do you think it's a matter of Coach Payton, or do you think it's a matter of Coach Payton not being able to coach the talent or lack thereof that he has? Basically what I'm saying is, do you think it's a lack of talent and that Sean Payton can't groom a guy, he has to win with guys who are already kind of proven?
Great question, Brian. I'm going to tell you what, when I'm looking at the Saints games, I'm going to be honest with you, with all of you and Miss Judy, I don't enjoy watching them because it's bad coaching at times, poor play calling at times, and he has so much control over everything that it's become a detriment. I think the talent is there, Brian, because we've seen what Dennis Allen did with a depleted defense. This defense has played solid in the second half of 7 straight games. This defense, if you take over the Saints, number one, let me change that a little bit. I can't blame the turnovers on Coach Payton. When you have Drew Brees with 8 turnovers in 4 games and the offense with 10 turnovers in 4 games, either the messages from his unit coaches is not working or the players are unfocused and simply cannot grasp the concepts that the coaches are trying to convey over to them. Because what happens is in leadership, and because I've worked in leadership and led teams all my life in corporate America, at the end of the day, Brian, when an area of functionality that you're responsible for getting done and achieving results, at the end of the day, if your unit or your team is not functioning correctly, they're going to come to me. Garrett, your team is not functioning, meeting the goals and standards of the corporation. So at the end of the day, we got to get another leadership person. So we're going to have to let you go. And that's why I put the ownership on him. Not that it's all his fault. It's certainly not Coach Payton's fault that you turned the ball over 10 times in 4 games. It's certainly not your fault that you have Drew Brees throwing 8 interceptions and forcing the ball. It's certainly not your fault when Mark Ingram fumbles the ball when you've taught him how to hold up. It's not your fault when Michael Thomas is fumbling the ball. It's not your fault when Brandon Cooks openly displays his disenchantment with situations on social media. Coach Payton can only do so much, but at the end of the day, the accountability is going to go all the way up to the leadership, just like whoever's the president. If anything goes wrong in the United States, the people are going to look at President Obama. If anything goes wrong in terms of Congress, they're going to look at our senators and House of Representatives for resolution and result. And unfortunately, because the team is 20-34 and so much stuff is coming out, ultimately, Mickey Loomis and Coach Sean Payton, either you're drafting the wrong players, either your unit coaches, because I've been a big component saying Bill Johnson and, Joe Vitt, and most importantly, the man McMahon. The Saints have lost 3 to 4 games because of the Saints' offense and special teams unit. And some of these people he has kept in place and trying to revitalize what happened in 2009, bringing back these old coaches. It's not working out. So that's why I say, Brian, ultimately it falls on Coach.
Well, guys, let me go ahead and grab the mic just because, Professor, I appreciate your input. We don't have a time limit here, but we have around 40 minutes past our scheduled time. So just try to wrap up the next 5 minutes, there's one thing that I think that I know Brian TNR says a lot that I agree with, and I think even Brian in California will say, and that is that Sean Payton is not going anywhere, whether the problem be on his head or not. He just signed a big extension. Mickey Loomis is, to quote Sean Payton, to quote Tom Benson, one of the greatest hirings he's ever made. I don't see, barring a 2-14 type season, Sean going anywhere because of the contract extension. Now, also to your question that, Brian asked you, do I think that Payton can develop talent? For one, I don't think there's any question that he can develop offensive talent, because you've seen not only guys succeed here like Willie Snead and Lance Moore and Robert Meacham, but those same guys leave the team, and most of the people who leave are not as successful away from here as they are here. You can make the argument some of those guys left older, like Lance Moore, but Robert Meacham left in his prime, wasn't much in San Diego, came back and was fine here at home. Most running backs who have – even Jimmy is not as – Jimmy's still good, don't get me wrong, but Jimmy's no longer in the conversation for best tight end in the NFL, whereas when he was in New Orleans, he was all-pro, possibly the best, second to Gronk if he was second to anybody. Now that he's in Seattle, I can probably name 3 or 4 guys who are performing better than Jimmy Graham, maybe 5 guys, just because he's not New Orleans Jimmy Graham. But regardless of all that, I still think Payton can, one, develop talent, but I don't think he's going anywhere. And I think there's not – I understand the reason to bring up the argument, but it's kind of a moot point because I don't see any chance of him really going anywhere. Do either Brian think differently?
Well, you know my opinion on it. I think Sean Payton's here as long as he wants to be.
I'm gonna agree with him on that. I think there are people who work under Sean who need to be replaced.
I think all three of us will agree on that.
Very top of my list. He's been abysmal. I'm 50-50 on Bill Johnson. Joe Vitt, I think, does bring value to the team as far as an assistant coach standpoint. Now, as a positional coach, you can replace him and still keep Joe Vitt in house, and he does bring value in the locker room, in the background, helping Sean run the organization, those kinds of things. Greg McMahon has been terrible his entire career. Yeah, the same special team has always been bad. You can look no further than Darren Sproles, as incredible as he was at times in New Orleans, didn't produce very much on special teams for the Saints, but he's returning something every other week over in Philly, and he did the same thing when he was in San Diego. That tells you something, that the opportunities weren't there as much. So I don't think Sean's going in there. I'm not even fully convinced Sean's entirely the problem. I want to give him another year or two because I have seen improvement the last year and a half where, frankly, they were losing with rosters that I don't think anybody could win with. But
I want to throw this out there.
Coming.
I'm not trying to cut you off, but just because we're starting to run on. I want to throw this out there just to support your point to what you're saying. Darren Sproles in New Orleans was explosive. His best season in terms of yards per punt return was 10.1. He left New Orleans at 6.7. But hear what he's done in Philadelphia since leaving and being older. 2014, he was averaging 13 yards on punt returns with 2 touchdowns. 2015, 11.7. And this year, 13.7 yards, almost 14 yards a punt return since going to Philly. And then if you go back to his San Diego days, 2008 he had 11.3, 2007 9.5. So he's been consistently better than he was in New Orleans as a special teamer in 2 other locations. And then I'll let y'all continue. I just want to throw that out there for everybody listening.
I'll make this point about Sean Payton and what's going on with him when it comes to Greg McMahon. And hopefully this is the year Sean Payton severs his friendship with Greg McMahon and just, call it a day, because if not, the Saints are going to continue to suffer for it. As Brian pointed out, and I totally agree with him, Saints special team has always been awful. And of course, every year, some running back, a wide receiver makes the team because he makes a special teams play. But you never get the feeling that it's because it's of great coaching. You always seem to think that that guy just made a great play, or he's just a talented player, and that's why the Saints were able to make that move. I have no faith in Greg McMahon ever being anything but a clipboard holder who kind of just barks around and he's getting paid to do nothing right at this point. So I don't think in order for Sean to totally be at fault, unless we're going to sit here and say that his biggest thing is being too loyal to certain people, because he's giving people the boot for a lot less, and Greg McMahon continues to stick around.
Well, look, I don't know if, Greg McMahon has got some dirt on Peyton, or, there's some other things that we probably don't need to share on air that he's got a hold on for Peyton. Whatever type of connection or deal he provides, he seems to be safe for the moment. But there is hope there, because we did bring in a consultant. For the most part, Lutz's kicks have been on a higher trajectory since said consultant has come in. Maybe Greg's out the door this offseason. Who knows? Maybe the consultant leaves, never comes back, and it's the same old next year and beyond. Who knows? Who can say? I want to do this, though, guys. I've really enjoyed having both of y'all on. Just as a quick recap, y'all ended up agreeing on more than you disagreed with, so maybe the next Who Dat Confessional, we'll work on bridging this broken friendship. But, guys, I want y'all to throw out your handles, let everybody know where they can follow you. I want to thank all the listeners and call-ins we had tonight. It's a great night. We went over, but we also had some great talk of Saints football. So, Brian and CA, give us your information, then we'll go to Brian TNR, and I'll wrap us up.
You can find me at Kirus16, KIRUS16 on Twitter. I write for Saints Nation and Canal Street Chronicles, and I'm the host of the Saints Nation podcast.
For me, you can find me at Brian TNR. I am your friendly, ignorant Twitter Saints fan. Of course, still can find me on the Sports Hangover every Tuesday and Friday, covering the NFC South, as well as right here on Who Dat Confessional. And I will be bringing back Shots Fired soon. And, of course, if you all have had the pleasure of listening, I get crazy on there, but it's all in good fun. So take care. See you guys next week, and we'll be right here to do it again.
All right, and as Brian just informed you guys, Who Dat Confession will be back next Tuesday, 7 to 9 p.m. If we happen to run a little over because y'all want to call in and have an opinion, we are completely open to that. Don't forget that you can download this podcast, listen to it later wherever you want. Just go to saintsnews.net, or you can go to our Spreaker website directly. We'd love to have you, and we definitely appreciate the input from all you guys tonight. So Who Dat, God bless. Remember, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock next Tuesday. We'll see you then. And let's hope for a Saints win this Sunday.
Amen to that.